Before we begin today's story, take a second to like this video, subscribe to Old Hollywood Pulse, and turn on notifications. These stories only survive because people like you keep them alive. Now, imagine a man who sat calmly behind a desk for more than 30 years, shaping America's nights with a raised eyebrow and a perfectly timed pause. Johnny Carson wasn't just a host. He was a gatekeeper of trust. Millions believed that when Johnny smiled, everything was under control. But that illusion didn't come easy. Behind the laughter and applause was a constant tension, one the audience never saw. Every night carried risk. Every guest was a gamble. And sometimes, the moment someone stepped through that blue curtain, Carson already knew the night might go sideways. He didn't panic. He didn't show fear. He adjusted. What followed wasn't comedy, it was quiet crisis management, performed live, under studio lights with no safety net. To viewers, The Tonight Show felt comforting and predictable. Johnny walked out, delivered a monologue, waved to Ed McMahon, and welcomed a guest. But backstage, especially during the 1970s, predictability was an illusion. The entertainment world was deep into excess. Alcohol flowed freely. Drugs were common. Celebrities arrived carrying pressure, expectations, and often substances meant to dull fear. Some arrived slightly buzzed. Others arrived barely present. Producers later admitted that chaos hovered near the studio almost nightly. Johnny Carson knew this reality better than anyone. He didn't need producers whispering in his ear. He could read people instantly. A smile that lingered too long. Eyes that didn't focus. Movements slightly out of sync. These were signals. And when he saw them, Carson didn't judge. He calculated. His job was simple but brutal. Keep the show intact without destroying the person sitting across from him. What most people never knew was that The Tonight Show had its own silent language. No words, no announcements, just subtle gestures understood only by those trained to notice. Production assistants watched posture and speech patterns. Segment producers stood ready to cut material instantly. And Johnny himself used coded signals. A brief touch to his tie meant the guest wasn't fully sober. Straightening his cards twice warned the control room to shorten the segment. These signals weren't cruel. They were protective. The goal was never humiliation. It was survival for the broadcast and for the guest. One disastrous appearance could haunt someone's career for decades. Carson understood that better than anyone. He believed television carried responsibility. And when things went wrong, it was his duty to absorb the shock quietly, without exposing weakness. The pressure on guests was overwhelming. Unlike today's tightly scripted interviews, Carson favored spontaneous conversation. That terrified performers. No cue cards, no rehearsed jokes, just raw presence. To cope, many turned to alcohol, pills, marijuana, or cocaine long before arriving at the studio. The green room became a pressure chamber. One drink was unofficially acceptable. 2 raised eyebrows. Beyond that, it depended on who you were and how well you could still function. Johnny himself drank off camera, but never lost control on air. That contrast mattered. If a guest could still deliver, Carson guided them gently. If they couldn't, he shifted instantly into containment mode. That line between control and collapse defined his legacy. No guest embodied controlled chaos better than George Carlin. He appeared on The Tonight Show over 100 times and became one of Carson's most trusted presences. By the early 1970s, Carlin had fully transformed long hair, sharp language, counterculture philosophy. His marijuana use wasn't hidden. It was expected. Crew members joked that the slightly glazed look in his eyes was part of the costume. But Carlin was functional, brilliant, prepared. His timing never slipped. Johnny understood this. He gave Carlin space, asked open questions, and let him roam intellectually. The audience loved it, but there was still a boundary Carson never crossed. Despite Carlin's brilliance, he was never invited to guest host. Running the show required precision and absolute reliability. Carson admired Carlin, but he wouldn't gamble the entire machine. Years later, Carlin confirmed what everyone already suspected. In his autobiography, he admitted he was often stoned during his Carson appearances. He didn't apologize, he explained. It was the era. It was who he was, and it worked for him. But Carlin represented the safest version of chemical enhancement. That balance was rare. When substances tipped from enhancement into instability, Johnny Carson's role became far darker. And no one embodied that danger more than Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was brilliance wrapped in volatility. His appearances carried tension long before he spoke. Crew members remembered moments when he was electrifying, and moments when he drifted, mid-sentence, as if something inside him disconnected. One late 70s appearance became infamous. Pryor began recounting childhood trauma, then lost the thread entirely. His words fragmented. His eyes shifted. The audience laughed nervously, unsure if it was part of the act. Johnny knew it was. He moved immediately into protection mode. He redirected gently, shortened answers, reset rhythm. To viewers, it looked smooth. Backstage, it was emergency control. Pryor's cocaine use was escalating, and Carson saw it in real time. Carson never mocked Pryor, never exposed him. He treated him with dignity even when Pryor couldn't fully protect himself. Former NBC executives later revealed Carson quietly checked on Pryor through mutual friends, genuinely worried. But that compassion had limits, and those limits would be crossed in a way America never expected. Truman Capote's appearance stunned everyone. He wasn't a rebel or comedian, he was a literary icon. But the moment he walked out, it was clear something was wrong. His speech was slurred beyond recovery. His head dipped forward, then snapped upright like he was waking mid-thought. Carson tried everything, simplified questions, slowed packing. Nothing worked. Capote wasn't present. When the show cut to commercial, Carson went backstage and made a decision. Capote would never return. It wasn't punishment. It was necessity. Non-functionality crossed Carson's line. Cheech and Chong sat at the opposite end of the spectrum. They never pretended to be sober. Their cannabis use was public and woven into their comedy. Carson understood that instantly. Instead of resisting it, he leaned into contrast, playing the straight man. The audience understood the joke without it being stated. They delivered. They stayed professional. And they remained in control. That's all Carson ever asked. Fonda's appearance blurred the line between counterculture and collapse. From the first question, he drifted, speaking about time, consciousness, and cosmic connections. His focus faded in and out. Crew members later said his pupils were heavily dilated. Carson simplified everything. But when Fonda drifted again, Carson signaled for an early cut. Fonda vanished mid-segment. No explanation, just professionalism. Oliver Reed was different. His intoxication escalated into aggression. He interrupted Carson, raised his voice, and began demonstrating fighting stances. That crossed the final line. Carson shut it down. Reed was never invited back. Substance use was tolerable. Threats were not. Sammy Davis Jr. arrived wired, intense, and unstoppable. His energy screamed cocaine, but he delivered. Stories landed. Punchlines hit. Carson let him run. Afterward, Carson joked he was exhausted but never critical. Davis stayed within the rules. Those rules were simple. Don't threaten anyone. Don't disrespect the audience. Don't waste airtime. Bend expectations if you must, but deliver. Johnny Carson never humiliated guests. He shielded them when possible and cut them loose only when necessary. That balance preserved careers and dignity. Johnny Carson never believed his role was to expose weakness. In fact, he believed the opposite. His responsibility, as he saw it, was to absorb chaos so the audience never had to. When a guest struggled, Carson didn't see scandal, he saw vulnerability. And vulnerability, especially under bright lights, deserved protection. That belief shaped every decision he made. He shielded guests from embarrassment when he could, redirected conversations when they drifted into danger, and quietly shortened segments before collapse became spectacle. To the public, it looked effortless. But behind that calm delivery was a man constantly calculating outcomes in real time. Carson understood that a single humiliating moment could follow someone for the rest of their career. He refused to be the man who caused that damage when restraint could prevent it. What Johnny Carson was truly protecting wasn't just individual guests. It was the unspoken contract between television and the audience. Viewers tuned in expecting laughter, not discomfort. They trusted him to filter the chaos of celebrity culture and present something safe, controlled, and dignified. Carson respected that trust deeply. He knew that once an audience felt uneasy, once they sensed exploitation or cruelty, the illusion was broken. And illusions were fragile. So when things went wrong, Carson never announced it. He never pointed it out. He quietly repaired it. In doing so, he preserved not just the show, but the emotional experience millions relied on night after night. The 1970s were a volatile era, culturally, chemically, and emotionally. Excess was normalized, boundaries were blurred. Many hosts leaned into chaos for ratings. Johnny Carson did the opposite. He became the anchor, the still point in a spinning room. When guests unraveled, Carson remained steady. When conversations drifted into danger, he gently pulled them back. His calm wasn't accidental. It was disciplined. He understood that composure was power and restraint was authority. In an age defined by rebellion, Carson represented control, not as suppression, but as stewardship. Every rescue Johnny Carson performed happened live, with no retakes and no safety net. There was no delay button, no editing room to fix mistakes. When a guest faltered, Carson had seconds to decide how to respond. Push forward or pull back, lighten the moment or end it. Those decisions weren't scripted. They were instinctive, built from decades of observation and emotional intelligence. That's what separated Carson from every host who followed. He wasn't just reacting, he was anticipating. And the audience never saw the danger because he never let it surface. This is why Johnny Carson remains unmatched. Not because he told the best jokes or landed the sharpest punchlines, but because he carried the weight of the room without letting it show. He understood human fragility in a way few public figures ever have. He knew brilliance and self-destruction often lived side by side. And instead of exploiting that tension, he managed it. Carefully, compassionately, with restraint. Long after the laughter faded, it's that quiet professionalism that defines his legacy. So now the question belongs to you. Which tonight's show moment shocked you the most? Which guest crossed the line? And which ones were saved by Johnny Carson's steady hand? Do you believe he was protecting his guests or protecting television itself? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you appreciate stories that go beyond headlines and uncover the human truth behind Hollywood legends, make sure you subscribe to Old Hollywood Pulse. These stories don't survive without you. We'll see you in the next video.